Today's Columbus Metropolitan Club Forum, Back to School with Interim Superintendent Dr. Dan Good, is sponsored by Columbus State Community College, represented by David Harrison, and Columbus State Community College Foundation, represented by Pam Bishop, and the Columbus Foundation, represented by Lisa Cordes. Please join me in thanking them. I'd like to welcome David Harrison from Columbus State to introduce today's speaker, the President of Columbus State.
Thank you, Todd. Good afternoon, everybody. At Columbus State, we have a personal stake in the health of Columbus City Schools and the success of our students. We serve more Columbus City School students than any other college or university in our region. And I had the opportunity to serve on the Columbus Education Commission, the task force organized by Mayor Coleman and Council President Ginther this spring. So I was delighted when on June 27th, Dr. J. Daniel Good was named interim superintendent. Dan and I had the opportunity to work together when he was at Westerville Schools, so I know Columbus schools are in good hands. Dr. Good began his career as a classroom teacher and later became a principal in the Worthington City School District. He then served in a number of capacities in the Ohio Department of Education, including Chief of Improvement Services and Executive Director of the Center for Curriculum and Assessment. Dr. Good then went on to become Superintendent and Chief Executive Officer for Wooster City Schools, and most recently, he served as Superintendent and Chief Executive Officer of Westerville City Schools, where he served for 6 years. Now, you may not know it, but Westerville is the 10th largest district in the state, serving nearly 15,000 students. The student population of Westerville is diverse. 1/3 of students are minorities and 32% are disadvantaged. While the poverty rate doubled in Westerville during Dr. Good's tenure, the academic performance continued to improve, from a state report card grade of B when he started to an A+ when he retired. Fortunately, Dr. Good has emerged from retirement to take on perhaps his biggest assignment so far, to help right the ship within Columbus City Schools. I have to smile when I hear retirement. I mean, some people fish, some guys go play golf. Our community is fortunate that Dan chose in the next phase of his life to offer his steady hand of leadership at a time when it's needed most. Without question, he has hit the ground running. Dr. Good is going to tell us a little bit about why he took on this challenge, what his goals for the schools are, and why as a community we must work together to achieve them. After that, he'll participate in a discussion with Mark Reel, President and CEO of Kids Ohio, a nonprofit organization focused on improving education in our state. We promise to have plenty of time for questions at the end. Please join me in welcoming Interim Superintendent Dr. Dan Good.
So while I was reviewing my remarks, I didn't realize my water glass was dripping. And so if I stumble on some words, it's because they're very blurry now. Thank you, David, for your kind introduction, and thank you to the Columbus Metropolitan Club members for allowing me this opportunity to share with you my concerns about and the goals for Columbus City Schools. You've hosted many speakers over the years who have addressed the needs of our community's children, and it is clear to me that most community leaders and concerned citizens, such as yourselves, share the views of Mayor Coleman and the Columbus Education Commission. We must do better for the sake of our children and for the sake of this vibrant and thriving community. And I'm here to tell you, we can do better. No, we will do better. 4 F's, 3 D's, and 2 C's. No one in this room would view those marks as acceptable measures of our own performance, and we simply cannot tolerate that performance from our school district. Let's take a look at what those grades mean. In the state report card released 2 weeks ago, Columbus City Schools failed to meet any state math, science, or social studies standards for any grade. We failed to meet any state reading or writing standards in elementary or middle schools. We failed in the number of students who make a year's worth of academic gains in math and reading in grades 4 through 8. The achievement gap between white and African American students is gaping and well below state expectations. And our 4-year high school graduation rate is only 79%. As our students head back to school, our central office, our teachers, principals, and staff are heading back to school with a new attitude and a plan to do things differently. We are determined to operate with efficiency and with integrity. We are dedicated to bringing professionalism and expertise to our schools so that all of our children receive a quality education that prepares them for success after graduation. We are focused on making instructional changes, fixing our facilities, bringing technology into our classrooms, and engaging the whole community in nurturing the educational lives of our children. We are not daunted. We are realistic. The changes that must be made will not all be made in the next year. They are part of a 5-year plan inspired by the Columbus Education Commission and developed by the district's millage committee with significant community input and in collaboration with education experts. And implementing this plan will require a heroic team effort from all sectors of our community, from all of you. Let me share with you some of what we're doing this year. In the area of early childhood preparation for learning, the research is absolutely clear. Children who acquire specific knowledge and skills in their first 3 years do better when they arrive at school. Yet too many of our children come to school unprepared, without these basic early childhood experiences. This very day, we are opening 10 additional brand new pre-kindergarten classrooms in our district schools, and we will continue. And we will continue to add pre-kindergarten classrooms because there are many more students who need high-quality pre-kindergarten programs than those that have access to them. By passing the fall levy, we will be able to provide all incoming Columbus City Schools kindergartners with access to high-quality pre-kindergarten by the year 2020. And with these programs, we will ensure that children entering kindergarten in the future will be ready to learn. Getting students to read at grade level is another focus this year. Teachers, parents, and researchers all know that not all children learn to read the same way, and some children have more difficulty learning to read than others. While the whole group method of teaching reading has worked for some children, children who are struggling to learn to read need individualized instruction from master teachers trained in reading intervention. This year, we have moved 20 master teachers and administrators from a centralized professional development unit into the district's most challenged schools where they are supporting and improving instruction. In addition, 79 reading coaches have been assigned to these elementary schools, ensuring additional reading support at every elementary school. They will be assessing struggling readers in grades K through 3 to find gaps in their reading skills and to provide intensive, customized reading instruction. Reading literacy is a fundamental lifelong skill. Once students are reading, the path is cleared for learning to take place in all subjects. Getting students proficient in mathematics is also very important. As we are intensively focusing on reading skills this year, we also are beginning to address the skill gap in mathematics. 79 experienced mathematics coaches have been assigned to every elementary and middle school where they will help develop classroom instruction for the Common Core math curricula. This comprehensive math intervention program parallels our reading intervention program and is in the planning stages. Mayor Coleman has spoken eloquently about a new Columbus City school system where every child graduates prepared to go to college, to get a job, to serve in the military, or to start a business. And Columbus's expanding economy will need thousands of well-qualified graduates in order to thrive. To align career and college readiness programs with the needs of our local economy, we have launched a pilot career and technical program in the rapidly growing field of logistics in partnership with Columbus State Community College, the state's largest community college and the #1 college destination for Columbus City School graduates. Of course, whether students choose to go to work, enroll in college, or serve in the military, our responsibility is still to ensure that they have 21st century skills. And this leads me to the area of technology. Many of our classrooms and schools have broken computers and no Wi-Fi. Imagine your workday without access to computers, software, or even the internet. I kind of like that. Well, that wasn't in the script, I'm sorry. For our students to succeed post-high school, they simply must have experience with these technologies. Not to mention the fact that without working technology, we are currently falling behind in using blended learning, methods where students analyze information from the internet with the guidance of a classroom teacher. And research shows that student learning with blended instruction is faster than without it. We are not assessing the amazing tools available online to help teachers and students learn better, faster, and more economically. And here's a little something else. In the 2014-2015 academic year, state tests will be administered online. We must prepare our learners for this. Rest assured, we are deploying funds wherever we can to buy the technology modern classrooms require. But getting tablets and laptops into the hands of all students and teachers will require a substantial investment. Then there's the issue of professionalism in our schools. I talked earlier about putting more master teachers back into the classrooms to work with students. That's not the only thing we're doing to professionalize our school operations. Rather than having a bureaucratic central office direct day-to-day decisions about what's going on in the schools, we are empowering our principals, who are on the front line, to make more of these decisions. For example, principals now have more discretion in hiring and assigning staff and more control over their budgets. And in return, they are being held more accountable for results. Also, we're investing in retaining our best and our brightest principals and teachers. I'm very excited about a new partnership with the Ohio State Fisher College of Business to train the next generation of high-performing school leaders. A Fisher College professor will be working with us to develop a robust recruitment and talent management capability. We're also investing in new methods to track student progress. And by tracking progress, we are going to intervene earlier to help our students succeed. We will be accountable for both the academic achievement of our students and the fiscal integrity of the district. We are reducing costs and gaining efficiencies in a number of operational areas and deploying these resources to academic programs and to people. Finally, I want to talk about making urban education a priority for all residents. One of the biggest shifts in the recent past is the renewed sense of ownership our entire community is taking for our children's education. Like other cities where schools are excellent and children are thriving, our parents, educators, students, residents, businesses, civic leaders, and religious leaders are all getting on the team. Everyone is asking, what can I do? And there are many examples of this starting to happen here. Led by Pat Lisinski. Pat, where are you? Back here. The Columbus Metropolitan Library is expanding its homework help centers at all 22 libraries throughout the community. They are also issuing student library cards to Columbus City School students, enabling children of working parents to take out up to 3 books at their grade level without parental signature. Three appropriate books. City Years Diploma Now program is putting 44 recent college graduates alongside teachers to tutor students at South High School, Mifflin Middle School, Mifflin High School, and Lyndon McKinley. This program has been so successful at South High School that 93% of 9th grade students at South progressed to the 10th grade from last year. That's up from 70% the year before. Huntington Bank recently presented the largest ever single corporate donation of $750,000 and 1,200 volunteer hours to the I Know I Can program that helps students prepare for, enroll in, and complete college. Huntington was joined by Bob Evans, Donatos, Panera, and White Castle, all of whom made contributions to expand the I Know I Can outreach program. 70 volunteers have signed up to be trained by Ohio State University's reading experts so that they can work individually and in small groups with students to build their literacy skills. In fact, and this is where you get your pens out, if you're interested in get your pens out. If you're interested in becoming an in-school reading volunteer or have employees that may do so, please call our Office of Customer Relations. The number is very simple, and I'm watching you right now, 365-8888. We have volunteer packets prepared, training prepared, and we're ready for you. Columbus needs a school system that enables each and every child to reach her or his full potential. A quality education should not depend on the color of a child's skin, how much money their parents have, or the neighborhood they live in. Columbus once was a leader in education, and that helped make the city of Columbus great. Today, Columbus boasts the #1 library in the country, the #1 zoo in the country, even one of the finest football teams in the country. My goal is that one day we will again boast one of the finest urban school districts in the country. We need to do a lot of things to turn around the failures of the past. But I have lived in this community for 30 years, and I believe this community will not rest until together we have accomplished this goal. I need your support, but more importantly, our children need your investment of time and resources. I can tell you that they are counting on all of us, and for that, I thank you.
Well, Superintendent, it's not very often that first-time speakers get a standing ovation at this group. And so I do want to just, for those of you who can't see from the back, I do want to acknowledge the fact that our mayor, Michael Coleman, has been with us, and that this is a man who has spent literally hundreds of hours in the last year out at community meetings, in schools, listening to people, visiting our district schools and charter schools, and he is really determined to back up the words that Superintendent Good had. So maybe we acknowledge our mayor. And I want to acknowledge 3 members of the Columbus School Board who are with us today, and also members of the Columbus Education Commission. If you're there, please wave your hand. We want to acknowledge your service as well. Thank you. So, Dr. Good, I know that even though you've just been on the job since June 27th, you've already visited about 60 schools. What are you seeing, and what kind of reception are you getting?
The number is 15 from summer schools. We have 3 year-round schools as well, and then I just completed my 47th visit. And my goal was to shake the hands of every employee in the district. So it's fun to be able to talk to crossing guards and bus drivers, our wonderful custodial staff, and certainly the teachers, principals, intervention assistants. There's a sense of optimism, of enthusiasm, of efficacy across our ranks, and they're looking forward to partnering with this community to once again restore the schools to their rightful place of #1 in the country.
So speaking of restoring, one of the issues that the district has faced for the last year is the issue of data integrity. Can you share with us your thinking about how to restore data integrity to the district?
I can do that, and certainly the issue you're describing has often been referred to as the data scandal in Columbus, an embarrassment to the public school system and certainly our Board of Education.
On my first day in Columbus City Schools, which was July 1st, I felt I had a good meeting with the Auditor of State, and we talked about what may be perceived to be barriers to conducting a thorough investigation to identify any willful wrongdoing. And I believe we have been compliant with those expectations, but more so than that, we've exchanged a number of good ideas. For example, the board has passed policies already to ensure this couldn't happen again, and are in the process of considering guidelines that the auditor's office has agreed to review. Of the many individuals that were implicated and named in different venues, many of those are no longer with the district, either by their own choice or from some coercion. That's probably too strong a word. We'll stop now. But that investigation is ongoing. We are now conducting random audits, so that we'll be sampling 1,000 student records every year across 10 different sites and verifying the accuracy of that data, certainly by interviews with teachers. One of the things that makes me most proud, really, I was hired on July 1st, and in the state of Ohio, employees after July 10th, a Board of Education can hold that employee to their contract. So it's very difficult to lure the brightest and the best from other districts because those boards of education don't want to release them from their contracts. Sometimes we have to talk our colleagues into retiring in order that they'll come and spend their future career with us. And so I was very pleased to be able to have conversations with an individual I met in Westerville that had been a middle school principal, very successful in closing gaps in achievement in a very diverse setting, had moved to an elementary school and had done the same thing with Literacy Collaborative and Reading Recovery, 2 programs we're bringing to Columbus City Schools. I recognized that and moved her to the high school, where I wanted to see her achieve those same closures and gaps, but with a different demographic. And these were some of our highest performing students, those that may have been identified as superior cognitives or with giftedness. And so having a year's worth of growth in that population is oftentimes more difficult than those that are behind grade level. As a result of her success there for 2 years, I then invited her to oversee our alternative school and also all assessment and accountability for our district. She streamlined our operations. We have nearly no errors at all in our educational management information system data reporting, and has grown our program, our alternative program, for what used to be a credit recovery to one that is now credit acceleration. The fastest number of students are actually dropping out because the conventional system no longer works for them. They want to get ahead. They're ready for something more. And so this individual was kind enough to accept my invitation, and so I'll take this opportunity to introduce to you Dr. Michelle Klein.
And Dr. Klein will have the latitude to make sure that all the data we see going forward is data that both you and she have confidence in.
Indeed. If Dr. Klein has confidence in it, I would stand behind that. Okay. And she did that for us in former settings, and I'm confident. I actually know that Michelle started working before she was even named to the post for us, and continues to make great strides.
You'd mentioned working with disadvantaged students, and one of the things that David Harrison mentioned when he introduced you was that the poverty rate during the time that you were in Westerville doubled.
I wasn't responsible for that.
However, what doesn't often happen under those circumstances is that academic achievement continued to improve. And are there things that you and Dr. Klein learned in Westerville that perhaps Columbus could benefit from?
I cannot speak for Michelle, but I imagine from our dialogue over the past 6-7 years now would be that we had laser-like focus on goals for all students, and that every child would have a year's worth of growth. And we indeed deployed our resources to support those few targets, and really supported our building level teams in having autonomy to make those sorts of decisions versus a one-size-fits-all mentality that oftentimes may come from a central office administration. And I think that we use the data to drive our decision making. We are able to drill data down to levels where I could tell who in this room has not yet mastered 2-digit long division. And so very quickly I could group those I could group those individuals and provide an appropriate intervention without skipping a beat and offering what's needed for students that had mastered those skills. So using data to drive our instruction, I think, has been a strength. and making certain that our faculty and staff could rely on the integrity of that data and make appropriate inferences that had a lot of predictive validity that the treatment they applied was going to result in sustainable outcomes.
And can you do this in a district where the poverty rate is much higher? 82% of Columbus students are economically disadvantaged. Does this same approach work with greater levels of poverty? And also, about 1 out of 10 Columbus children's an immigrant. About 1 out of 6 children is diagnosed with a special education need. Will this same treatment apply here?
And it's a good question, a question I'm asked frequently, and thank you, David, for speaking about Westerville and the diversity in Westerville. Whereas Columbus, we speak about 91 different languages as a first language other than English. In Westerville, we spoke 73, so there was considerable diversity there. 3 of our buildings were significantly disadvantaged, and those are the buildings that I use as exemplars that you can close those gaps, and you can see anywhere from 16.3 percentage point gains in reading at one of those schools last year to 32 percentage point gains in mathematics at that same school. A school that was populated highly by immigrants and also disadvantaged individuals. It can be done, it has been done, and we will do it here. Or Michelle will go back to retirement. And I'll join you.
One of the issues that's in the air, and people have been seeing Mayor Coleman on television, is the Columbus Schools has 2 issues on the ballot this fall, issue 50 and 51. Perhaps you could share with us what those issues are about. And
I can indeed. There are 2 separate issues on the ballot, on the November 5th ballot. And the first is whether or not the community wishes to create an independent auditor's office, which would bring increased accountability to the district. The second issue is really whether or not to comprehensively fix Columbus City Schools by funding the recommendations of the Columbus Education Commission. There are specific millages dedicated to specific activities in that ballot, which is unique. And I think that's something we can be proud of. It also gives us a framework, a report card to which the community can hold us accountable. And we're committed to certainly implementing that robustly and quickly and efficaciously. So I can talk about some of the specifics in that. Certainly improving the technology. And I had spoken about the one-to-one correspondence with notebooks, laptops for students, increasing our career readiness offerings for students. These are our most in-demand programs now. Many of our students enter their K-12 experience not necessarily aspiring to enter college because of the financial barrier that they perceive. And so the programs that offer mechanical arts, the logistics program, cosmetology, food service, other career vocational tracks, our STEM programs, our allied health programs are ones that seem to be attracting individuals because they realize upon graduation they will be career ready, oftentimes with a trade credential in order to have employment. And that's important to our students, and those are programs we wish to increase. We also want to continue to attract the best and the brightest, and we need some new tools to do that. I'm excited about the Fisher College partnership. I also know that there are tools out there, again, that have psychometric strength. We can assess pre-service teacher candidates to determine whether, in fact, they will be effective in a classroom. But again, resources are required to employ and deploy that tool. As well, we want to make certain we're replicating high-performing schools in every neighborhood. The many, many civic organizations with whom I've met all say they want a high-performing school in their neighborhood. Many of these families have lived there for generations, and they want to be able to look out the back window and see a thriving school that rates A or B or above. And they also want input into the other attributes of those high-performing schools. They want to make certain students are giving back to their community and they're invested in those neighborhoods. They want to make certain students have leadership opportunities. They want to make certain the schools are available for other interests of that community. Urban gardening, for example, in Southern Orchard region. And so making certain that we're responsive to what our citizens, what our constituents desire, and we will need resources, again, to make certain we customize those programs for them. I say that with one caveat, because in those same conversations, no matter whether it's Northwest Stars on the northwest side of our district, or to Marion Franklin, or to the East Columbus Civic Association, they want high-quality schools in their neighborhoods, but they don't want us to say they have to go to those high-quality schools. One of the richnesses of Columbus City Schools is that we do provide choice to our families. And so if there's a program on this side of town that resonates with your child's interests and motivates them to learn and stay in school and graduate and perhaps go on to post-secondary education, they want to continue to have opportunities to make those choices. And again, the accountability piece is very, very important to me. This board is committed, and this administration is committed to restoring the community's confidence in the integrity of the decisions we make and the data that we put before you. And we've taken such great strides in that regard, and we'll continue to take more as the investigations continue to produce additional findings to us.
I think there's some money in the levy request for innovation.
There is.
Can you talk a little bit about what that would mean for district schools?
There is and Carol, I never remember what the NSDP stands for, the Neighborhood Schools Development Partnership. I've attended a couple of those meetings. They're wonderful meetings, and Carol Shavsky is our chief in charge of capital improvements, and so she convenes that group. We have board members that sit on it, but they make those decisions about which buildings, and they do that not in isolation. They engage the community in understanding which buildings would receive renovations. Part of the money that the bond would fund would be to continue the Safe, Warm, and Dry program, making certain we're staying within the Ward A requirements, our HVAC, our roofs, our parking lots. But other would be there for new building, and we could build up to 10 new sites with the passage of that bond, and to continue on that program. It did break my heart last week, and I think it would break most of yours. And even though I grew up without air conditioning, this is the 21st century, and for our children to be sitting in classrooms where it's 92 degrees and 80% humidity is unconscionable to me. This would help us take another step. Some of those bond proceeds would also fund the parts of the technology initiative that have a shelf life of longer than 5 years, which is a requirement for use of capital funds. So,
you talked before about computers and some of the problems people have. What are some of the problems that you're hearing about as you go out to the buildings?
He set me up on this one, because one morning it took my computer 35 minutes to boot up. It was the morning I had exactly 45 minutes before my first meeting, and I thought I would have an opportunity to get a little bit of work done. Part of that was user error, but a part of it... I'm not sure why y'all find that funny, but it's like... but it's really a systemic error, because I didn't have what I felt was an appropriate tutorial, appropriate training to ensure that I wasn't putting in dgood at columbus.k12.oh.us. All I needed to put in was dgood. But so for 2 months, I continued to log in this way, thinking that it was going to take us 30 minutes to boot up each time. It doesn't. It only takes 15 minutes. But still unconscionable in this day and age. And think about teachers that travel between buildings or share classrooms with others, or students that only have 30 minutes or 25 minutes even on the other half of their lunch period that they want to log on and complete some work, and it takes them that long. And I know I'm singing to the choir because I see some of my CEA friends out there, and they will say this is true. And what saddens me when I walk through buildings is I note that a lot of our technology is not being utilized, probably because of its inefficiency.
This is a point in the program where the Columbus Metropolitan Club welcomes questions, not speeches. And the club asks, because this is televised, that you identify yourself. So there's a microphone that you can come to. While you're organizing your thoughts, I have a question for the superintendent, which is many people, this community is just getting to know you. And a number of people have asked me to ask you more about yourself. Where did you grow up, for example?
I'm from southwestern Ohio. I grew up in an old order German Baptist community there called Dunkards, about 21 miles north of Oxford. And I called my mom last night, and I anticipated this question, and I was fearful what I could and couldn't share. Because I grew up in a very loving family. The center point of our foundation was our faith and family and education. And for me, it was a royal upbringing. What people don't realize is that we had dirt floors. We had an outhouse. We had the pump to pump water at the sink. And so by all standards, we lived in poverty, and yet I didn't even realize that because of the way the community provided support, the way this community provides support to so many disadvantaged people here. And I don't generally share that, but I have 3 brothers, and my mother raised the 4 of us, and all 3 of my brothers are very successful. In fact, if you go to Alaska, my youngest brother, who's 4 years younger, he is responsible for all the emergency services for the Mount McKinley range. So if you decide to wander into the woods, give me a call, I can help you. And it's a good family. I used to write a lot about my family and share it with my staff. We're fondly referred to in many circles as UNICEF because it's quite the diverse family at this point.
As I mentioned, this is a time to ask questions. I know many of you have questions for the superintendent. So
but you don't have to.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here. We had a great temptation in calling this program Real Good. Or Good and Real. Either one would work. My name's Jane Scott, and I really do appreciate you sharing and being candid with us today. I'm a resident of the city of Columbus, and I'll be voting this fall. And I need some help convincing, as well as my neighborhood, love education, love the Columbus schools. There was a letter in the Dispatch a week or so ago, and I think it expressed the opinion of many of my neighbors. What are you doing with the $1 billion you got now? What do you need more money to throw good money after bad money? What will be the campaign answer to that to convince the residents of Columbus that this is a good investment?
Thank you. And I chuckled about the real good, or what was the other one? Good times?
Good and real.
Good and real. When the first radio interview I did in the city, it was with WCMH, and a great interview, but they seemed to focus more on whether I looked more like Arnold Schwarzenegger or Howie Long. And so I'm refreshed that you asked something different than they didn't seem the least bit interested in student achievement, but not certain why I shared that. What are we doing with $1 billion now? Yeah, it's a good question. I think when you look at what has occurred in the past, it's not something we can defend. What I can tell you is that we've taken a hard look at that budget, and as I've indicated, we've redeployed resources in very meaningful ways, in very targeted ways, in very research-based ways to support where our data shows we have improvement opportunities. We also look at what is research-based. Last evening, Todd Tooney did a nice presentation to the Board of Education because he oversees the City Year program, those 44 college students, and some that aren't yet college graduates, that are mentoring our students in 3 high schools and 1 middle school. This program shows impressive results. It's money where I can demonstrate a return on investment. Not all of the programs that the district has used in the past show a return on investment. And so we are in the process now of developing program profiles and performance to accompany any legislation that we take to our Board of Education so that they can see, as a result of this investment, you can anticipate these sorts of gains in this district. I think that's a commitment we need to make to this community. It is one we did in Westerville as well, where we had to reduce $23 million, which was significant in our budget, almost a fifth of that budget, our overall operating budget. But again, we used a business model and a matrix for making decisions about what we would retain in the district and which programs and services we would no longer be able to retain. I think some of the things we simply can't afford to do without passage of this levy, and that would be the extraordinary technology improvements that are required to make certain our students are ready, not only to enter the world of work and post-secondary education, I forgot where I was going with that second half of that, but we certainly need those there as well. So.
Great. Jordan Davis, a proud Westerville South graduate. Hey,
Hi.
Dr. Good.
Are you going to lead us in a flash dance?
Yeah.
Or flash mob? Or?
Absolutely. But so I've grown up in Westerville. Westerville's been my home for a long time, and you came after I left, and I now call Columbus home. and I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
But I think what is so cool about this place is whether it's good to great or excellence to eminence, this ethos in this community over the past few years has been all about making what is now better or best or number one. And we're kind of putting you in this position where we're taking you from an unacceptable position to asking you to get great. So we're having you skip over many levels, and that's really hard. And I guess I hear from people around the skepticism of the levy that, well, if not now, then maybe it'll just come in, in the spring or next year. And maybe the mayor, even Dr. Good, why is it now that we need this levy? And can you give us this rallying cry behind why we all need to stack hands, go in, all in for November and not wait?
I'll begin, and then I'll defer to Mayor Coleman to respond to this. And those of you that don't know, Jordan's mother is a president of the chamber in Westerville. We work very closely in developing these program service profiles, and the chamber partnered with us in actually looking at those reductions and creating specifications for RFPs for services that we outsourced. I mean, it was a beautiful relationship, really. But I mentioned the flash mob because when the Ohio Union opened, there was a young lady that rehearsed hundreds of students in the middle of the night, along with then President Gordon Gee, and Jordan was the one that orchestrated all of that. So my great hope was that the audience here would stand up and start dancing. You let me down. Next week. Jordan, if not now, when? There was a reading program in the state back in 2000. I think that was the motto, if not now, when, if not you, who, if not where, or something. I don't remember what it was exactly. We could lose an entire generation of students if we don't make those changes immediately, and that's not acceptable to me. That's not acceptable to me. I do believe I have, or at least someone believes I have a skill set that I can help take us from where we are and skip some of those levels you described. And I think if I have that opportunity, then that's a calling I need to listen to and address. But goodness, I think the bigger question is who in this room would say it's acceptable for one class to graduate without that support? And that would, I thought you raised your hand. You didn't, good. I'll let the mayor speak now. Would you like to do that?
24/7. Well, let me respond to this way. We're in a moment in time. We're living in a moment in time where our community is aligned, maybe for the first time and maybe for the last time, to solve the issues of education in this community. And I can think of no better time than right now to ask this community to reform education for the next several generations. This isn't something we do tomorrow. This is something we should have done a while back, but we have a chance to do right now. And that's why we're asking now. This time may never come again. And I would suggest to you that it probably won't ever come again. When we formed the Education Commission, I can tell you that going into the room, putting those people together, there were very few people in agreement about anything related to education. Although everybody agreed with the notion that it's important to educate our young people, very few people agreed as to how we get to that, what we need to do. That Education Commission was very diverse, very opinionated, but those 25 people who didn't agree with very much going into the room came out with a unified plan where they voted unanimously to say this is the Columbus education plan that will provide education, quality education for every child in Columbus for the next generation. How often do you get management, business, and labor agreeing on a topic? How often do you get the faith community, with the civic environment, and the business community, and the labor community, everybody together, saying, this is the direction of our city. So now is the time, and now is the moment in time. We have to do this now. And the final point is, what's on in November is a reform package. It's the reform package. And if we want to reform education in Columbus, we do it on November 5th. On that day, it'll get done. And Dan Good and the board are doing a good job right now in trying to, focus in that regard. So we're grateful for everybody. Can I eat now?
Hi, I'm Tiffany Grinstead. I am a resident of Clintonville and someone who's been in a public school almost every day because I have 2 children in Columbus City Schools, one at Dominion Middle School and one at Indian Springs. Great principals, great educators. My question has to do with, as you come to us as the leader of the Columbus City Public Schools, one of the things in my neighborhood in Clintonville that there's a lot of chatter about is, what does the levy mean in terms of charter schools? And what will charter schools mean in terms of what we're able to accomplish within the city schools, and particularly the neighborhood schools? So if you could talk for a little bit, and maybe we can interrupt Mayor Coleman's lunch one more time. I really think that that's the crux, at least for many in the Clintonville community, of understanding the charter school piece of the puzzle and how that works within the levy.
I agree. Thank you for that question, and thank you for your work at Dominion and Indian Springs. Those are 2 of the buildings I walked through yesterday, and just wonderful, dedicated families there involved, and the evidence is clear through their performance. We have work to do, obviously, in the area for students that are exhibiting giftedness, and that's pulling us down on our ratings there, but in other areas we're doing quite well, so good for you. I think it's an important question that you ask, and it's one that's raised no matter where you are, Clintonville, whether it's any of the other civic associations, nonprofits with whom I visited. And I will ask the mayor to also respond to this, but I do want to share with you that our community schools in Ohio already receive tax dollars. They count the number of students that come from the public schools, and there is an amount that's deducted then at the state level from the cash then that flows to the district from which those students come. So they are already funded. Your tax dollars are already supporting charter schools in this state. What's not happening, though, is there are no standards, no high-quality standards to hold those charters accountable for how those tax dollars are being used. And when you do a side-by-side of the charter schools and the public schools, there's very little difference in the percentage that are performing AB, those in the middle, and those that are performing in the DF range. Proportionately, it's nearly identical in Columbus. That's not acceptable to me as a taxpayer, that some of my tax dollars may be going to a for-profit sponsor of a charter school who doesn't have standards for high performance for their students, or they're not achieving those same standards. So the proposal is that we actually wrap some legislation around that. And we have high standards, and we have criterion, and we say that those high-performing charter schools or community schools are the only ones that will receive these new levy dollars. They can only exist in these particular neighborhoods where there are no A and B school options for families, that they have not only just those local report card indicators, but other things that neighbors say are important as high standards for their schools. And remember, I talked about volunteerism and service and opportunities to access the facilities at the end of the day, particularly the technology. So this actually wraps more structure and accountability around those schools. The Board of Education continues to determine how those dollars flow and to whom they flow using criteria that is established by the public-private partnership, which is an appropriate way to do this because the private part of the public-private partnership will also be asked to invest money into those schools that are high-performing. But it's not just limited to the communities. Those same standards should apply to the non-community schools that are in those neighborhoods. Mayor, I don't know if you wanted to tag onto that. He's so much more effusive.
All right, that was for lunch. This is for dessert. Let me just say this. Dr. Good's right. charters are already funded by the state, all right now, in the state of Ohio. And so, some facts first. First, there are 65,000 students between publicly funded charters and the district schools. So that's 65,000. Out of that 65,000, 15,000 go to charter schools. That number is going to increase over time. In fact, this year, there's 17 more charter schools in the city of Columbus than last year that have been authorized by the state. Another fact, 25% of the district students go back and forth to charter schools as we speak. So we're talking about the same population. 25% go back and forth between charters and district schools now. All charter schools are publicly funded, and 15,000 today go to charter schools. More will happen into the future. What we're trying to do in the city of Columbus, we have 1 mill out of 9 mills to focus on good charter schools in neighborhoods where we need them. Now, what we're trying to do in the city of Columbus is do what the state of Ohio has been unable to do or not wanting to do. And that is to make sure that charter schools are accountable. That is to make sure that charter schools are transparent, because the independent auditor, if there's money going to the charter, will have the ability to review those books as well. Make sure that there's transparency. It will also make sure that there are not-for-profit charter schools that have the potential of receiving funding, not for-profit charter schools. And that's a key difference. In addition, probably the most important part is that there will be local standards. Standards established by our community as to what we expect from charters. So it's a fact of life now. If we don't deal with this problem, we'll continue to see as many charter schools fail as there are in district schools with the same kids. We have a comprehensive solution here, and the comprehensive solution, again, deals with accountability, transparency, nonprofits, and local standards. Those things don't exist now at the state level. They can exist at the city level. And maybe the state will use the experience at the city level for the state. Who knows? Okay?
You're done.
So I want to apologize, especially to you, Sarah, that we are going to have to end the questions at this moment because we've already run over time. But if you'd like to visit our website or to follow up with us, it'd be great. And I really want to take an opportunity to thank Mark Reel and also Dr. Dan Good for being here today. It's just refreshing to hear, the energy that you have around education, and the mayor coming up here and being so supportive of the work that we're doing. And thank you, Dr. Harris, for being here as well, and Lisa Cordes for the work that you're doing at the Columbus Foundation and their support of education reform here in Columbus City Schools. I hope you enjoyed today's forum. Remember that you can see it again and share it